Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, gamer boys and girls, welcome back to the pod. The May bundle is here, and with that, a bunch of interesting titles, so without further ado, let's jump right into the May 2022 bundle.
Command & Conquer Remastered Collection my ass. First of all, as far as I'm concerned, 2 items of something isn't a collection. To which you might say, but V, it's not just the first 2 games of the CNC series, it's all the expansions as well. Well then name it CNC Red Alert Expansion Collection for God's sake. Point numero dos. Taking an almost 30-year-old game, spicing up the graphics and audio, but otherwise keeping everything about it as shit as it was back then, is certainly not something to call a remaster. The only way this would fly was if Exhibit launched a new series called Pimp My Game, and as far as I'm aware, that hasn't happened yet. With that out of my system, allow me to elaborate. In case someone wasn't familiar with said titles, Command & Conquer, the original, and Red Alert were the first 2 entries of the well-known real-time strategy series from back in 95 and 96 respectively. They were probably most recognized for their legendary FMV cutscenes that connected the individual maps of the story campaign, or possibly just as much for the background music. As far as the 2020 re-release is concerned, it keeps the original cutscenes, which I have no problem with, I prefer it this way. Take for example Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, which remade cutscenes that ended up worse than the original. The music has been remastered, multiple hundred tracks, legit job there, no complaints. The visuals were also redone, and credit where credit's due, you've got beautiful sprites to admire, which remain fully faithful to the CNC theme. Personally, I found myself just going back to the original graphics more often than not, but to each their own. However, beyond this point, it's just a joke. Pathfinding and AI, these are major issues that were present back many years ago, and absolutely nothing has changed in this version either. You'll send your units forward, and half the time half the squad just makes up their mind and starts off on a journey of their own. Maybe some are going for a scoop of ice cream, others might have left the kettle on, and the third bunch just couldn't be asked anymore. But even the remaining blokes that followed your order will be a letdown, as they'll just ignore enemies, stand around, enjoy the weather and wait to be exploded. Truth be told, the enemy AI often does the same, but 2 wrongs don't make a right. And it would be easy to call on the same old bullshit excuses here, like wanting to be true to the original and such, but why on earth would you want to remain true to something everyone knows sucks? I mean, why other than having no motive but a good old low effort, quick and easy cash grab? Fuck it, no reason to rant on this anymore. If you're a returning customer from 20 plus years ago, your nostalgia goggles will be able to carry you through a good few hours of gameplay, but if you're thinking about getting to know the game, I honestly don't think you're gonna have a good time.
Embr. First of all, if you're looking for a hyper-realistic fire brigade simulator, this is not the game for you. Embr makes fun of itself and makes irony its greatest strength. But in the end, in the midst of the confusion and the jumps on the trampolines from the burning roofs, it amused me. In Embr, lives are saved, like a modern superhero contemptuous of danger and death. In fact, the main objective is to recover people hidden in the most unthinkable meanders of the building, while trying to survive the fire that is raging and a whole series of problems deriving from the hot situation, such as exposed electrical cables that create electrified pools or unreachable heights or impassable chasms. With the help of various tools available, however, what seems impossible is made a little less complicated. For example, with the ladder we can both reach considerable heights and descend from a broken window. The levels obviously have a time limit given by the speed with which the flames envelop everything, including people. In this period of time, usually a few minutes anyway, we will have to reach the minimum target of saved people, taking them from the point, where you will find them, to the collection point, literally throwing them at it. What's really comical about this hustle and bustle is the fact that the dynamics and the gameplay mechanics that are created have nowhere near a hint of pathos, drama or fear normally stemming from similar situations. Seeing houses, gas stations, restaurants and shops catch fire is exhilarating. And when you break into a room with an axe in hand, just to find a person just staring at you like a potato instead of running away, it is simply fantastic. Not to mention the big boy sitting on a toilet playing blissfully on his cell phone just to be taken by force and thrown out the window to safety. As a core, we are asked to choose a mission in some sort of world map, and once the level is loaded, save as many people as possible. But there's more. Just as you can grab people to bring them to safety, you can take any other transportable object and then transfer it to the appropriate area to resell it. And here the gameplay becomes more layered because you may have guessed, you will begin to collect as many things as possible in order to accumulate a sum of money, regardless of the poor people waiting to be rescued, just to use the money to upgrade your gear. Embr is a little fire that manages to warm all souls. Without being pretentious, it stands out in the midst of AAA blockbusters, casually inviting in gamers who just want to have fun.
This one's an adventure game. It's also a point-and-click game. It's a puzzle game, it's a lesson in creationism and astrophysics, it has Elvis aggressively ejaculating into space. It's a weird as fuck experience. Gameplay mostly follows a point-and-click-esque experience, you, the player, interacting with scenes or short puzzles by clicking, dragging or performing certain motions. Without a single line of spoken dialogue or text to guide you, you'll have to figure out both the goal and the how-to of each level. That being said, everything I've come across so far is pretty self-explanatory and well telegraphed by introducing bite-sized starter puzzles which then get more complex step by step. And also through the main theme of each level, which is communicated through these blocks of science texts that almost feel like someone's study cards were just imported into the game. For example, you'll have 3 paragraphs on how we don't currently know how life just came out of nowhere, and then your puzzles will revolve around creating life from nothing. Now if anything, presentation is outstanding here. Obviously, more striking are the visuals that play off of a heavy contrast in a minimalistic environment, but whilst playing, even that is topped by the high quality jazz background music and the sound work that supports everything else just as it has to. You'll come across the usual indie game symptoms of occasionally bumping into the environment where you seemingly shouldn't, or the opposite, thinking you should be able to walk somewhere and realize you can't. And every now and then mouse controls feels a bit off too, but neither of these are present to a level of annoyance. For me, the weirdest question about Genesis Noir is whether this is even a game, as I continuously keep getting a feeling that this is rather an experiment in visual storytelling, and that it just ended up taking the form of a PC game, while there was probably just as much of a chance that it would turn out an animation. I'm also fairly certain more people would dislike the experience than like it, but providing one of the most unique gaming experiences I've had to date, I have no doubt in my mind that everyone should at least give this one a try and then decide whether or not they want to continue exploring it.
Planet Zoo is a fantastic tycoon game, perhaps the best of those made by Frontier. Once the game is started, I immediately threw myself into the campaign, or career mode, which also serves as a tutorial. The campaign is structured in individual missions, in each of which we are given a series of objectives that can earn us a bronze, silver or a gold star. Members of our staff will accompany us in the discovery of the game, who will show us in detail what we must do, at least in the first missions, but after that giving us more space in the following ones. So in theory, we should be able to proceed on our own. In Planet Zoo, the player's main task is to prepare and optimize the artificial and non-artificial biomes of the park in which the animals will live. The options offered are many, sometimes even stunning in quantity. In general, every animal needs its habitat for it to be happy and, if necessary, to reproduce, generating more animals. Our obligation is balancing their needs with the commercial ones of the park. So we first have to build enclosures that are comfortable and at the right height to keep the animals from escaping, and then shape the terrain to create the environment that is as interesting as possible for the specimen. Once the vegetation has been decided, it is time for food and water, so it is necessary to build the right structures, for example a shelter, and then prepare the enclosure in such a way as to create observation points for the visitors to encourage donations to the park. Once all these are done, you can select the animals assigned to the enclosure, which must be first to be adopted in the game shop and then to be transported by our employees, and see if they have any needs we have not considered. From an aesthetic point of view, Planet Zoo aims for realism, and this ends up increasing the player's involvement. A monkey that looks like a real monkey, moves like a real monkey, and behaves like a monkey is interesting to look at, as well as pleasant to look after. The whole part of the editor, therefore that of animal care, is a mammoth and very complete, to the point that you can easily forget about the rest. Planet Zoo is an excellent title, to the point where you can spend days on it, and days without ever getting tired, trying to build more parks in different environments.
If Found is an LGBTQ-themed visual novel. You'll spend most of your playtime either erasing text or images to reveal the continuation of the story, or clicking to progress conversations. While the erasing part starts off as a fun new addition to the genre, I quickly found myself bored of waving my cursor around the screen again and again, and ended up just using the auto-erase function. Main story comes with a roughly hour-and-a-half playtime, following which you can spend, let's say, another half an hour getting to know what happened to the characters in the following years. Safe to say, you won't get much replayability value out of this one. While the visuals are simplistic, the direction fits the theme and remains enjoyable throughout. Same can be said for the background music and most of the sound design as well. There's just a handful of occasions background noise is annoying on purpose, and it just turns out to be too much. Other than these select points, from an overall artistic view, the way each aspect of presentation is used to convey moods or scenery is definitely the highlight of the title. As far as the story goes, it seems to aim to convey the hardships of being a young member of the LGBTQ community and having to struggle with being accepted for who you are. As far as I'm considered, it just misses completely as this whole aspect gets lost in the ever-present teenage angst. Either way, if you've got an hour and a half to spare, you might want to check this one out, if only for the presentation aspect, otherwise it's also a safe skip.
Spellcaster University is an indie video game from SneakyX Studio. A few words to immediately understand what awaits us in the game. Irreverent humor set in a fictional school of fantasy magic, where all the decisions we make will play a decisive role in optimizing resources. In this game we will become the headmaster of a magical university in a fantasy world. We will build our school, we will manage the resources, and we will have to recruit teachers too. We'll decide in what field our students will specialize in, such as that of light, embrace demonology, deal with alchemy or natural magic. Our students, assisted by the professors, will have to study all the magical knowledge, specializing and obtaining at the end of the course of study a real diploma that will define his future profession. From our school will come out village wizards, adventurers, healers, and if the person was dumb, simply villagers. The setting reveals a feeling of magic that many will recognize. Starting from the structure of our school, we will notice many similarities with a certain very famous castle that we have come to know, Hogwarts. The allusions are really many, starting from the houses, in which we'll sort out our students and beyond. In short, there will be Easter eggs. It all starts on an empty board, in which we will draw cards, based on our mana, that will allow us to build different rooms. Proceeding in the game, we will be able to add rooms of different types, and each construction we will make will have repercussions on the mana we will generate, and consequently on how much our institute will specialize in a particular school of magic. The system closely resumes that of other very popular management video games, although a peculiarity of Spellcaster University lies in the randomness of the catches. Anyone who knows games like The Sims will find themselves at home. In Spellcaster University, the needs of our students and professors are marked with special bars, which will fill up if we do not take care of them. Students must study, this is true, but also rest, eat and have fun, or they will gradually abandon the castle. Important are the events that we will have to face and the relationship with the factions that are around the school. Therefore, we will not only have to think about the castle, but also about the monastery of the Inquisitors, the local king, and the Guild of Adventurers, who will be able to propose missions to us, or present their problems to us, such as lost cows or orc problems. Every decision we make will have consequences on our balance sheet, or on relations with that particular faction, with bonuses and penalties that will be activated if we know how to consolidate our alliance, or if we let hatred flow between the parties. Some factions will offer us dangerous exploration missions, in which we will have to enter real dungeons. Every game choice we will make have repercussions in the short or long term. Long term of the consequences that sooner or later we will have to face. There is only one choice that we can delay, but not avoid. Namely the arrival of the great evil, the baddest villain, who will fill a progressive bar that once filled, will force us to flee the place where we built our castle to start it all over again. However, our progress will allow us to have specific bonuses and penalties in the next location, ready to create new houses and new rooms. In conclusion, Spellcaster University is a game that at first glance seems simple, but which has particular and original mechanics that make it dynamic and fun. The feeling, unfortunately, is that the game wants to put too much meat on the fire, inserting sometimes unnecessary statistics or events that are chaotic compared to the initial premise. Spellcaster University is still very enjoyable, and we can finally run our School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in a very successful, humorous fantasy setting.
Surviving the Aftermath unsurprisingly invites you to a post-apocalyptic colony survival simulator. Think the child of RimWorld and Frostpunk dropped into the Fallout universe. Core gameplay is split between a local area you set up camp in and an overworld map you are supposed to explore. Your immediate surroundings you have control over will serve as your base of operations. You'll gather resources indispensable for survival, such as food, water or firewood, as well as other resources required for progression in one way or another, for example building materials, crafting components and others. This is also the area you have to build the most optimal base layout, and at the same time where you'll have to fend off potential attacks of mad animals from the wilderness, or a different kind of threat coming in the form of your angry and/or greedy neighbors. The overworld map asks less involvement from the player. This is where you'll send out your hero characters, so-called specialists, to discover the world in hopes of scavenging rare resources and, just as importantly, lost tech, which is basically your currency you can spend on researching new technologies. You won't have to bend under your desk to find your jaw you dropped after seeing the presentation of STA, but I think it's fair to say it looks pretty enough for you to invite it in for a cup of coffee. At the same time, even less can be said about sounds and music. Even though I've hardly finished playtesting 20 minutes ago, I had to bring up my recordings to refamiliarize myself with the easily forgettable soundtrack. STA doesn't appear to deliver anything special to the table, neither gameplay nor presentation-wise, but instead presents the player with a well thought out core gameplay loop and polished visuals. As far as survival colony builders go, this is what Renault is for the automotive industry. Pretty far from your dream car, but riding any one of their models, you have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. Actually, you have all the reason to feel good about yourself for accomplishing something.
SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom is perhaps not one of the most memorable titles to bring back, but it is certainly one of those productions made with love and determined to show that even licensed game can show off quality. The original game stood out for the classic humor of the cartoon, with its huge world to explore and its level of challenge brought to the table. Now it has been re-released with some additional content. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom is a three-dimensional platformer where exploration and combat are mixed in equal measure, with a difficulty curve capable of quickly rising to unexpected heights. All three characters that you are going to use also plays a fundamental role in the exploration of the levels, with particular abilities linked to the individual protagonist, thanks to which you can unlock new secret areas and collect additional golden spatulas and Patrick socks. These are the main collectibles and driving force of this production. Defeating the numerous bosses at the end of each level, in fact, is only the tip of the iceberg, since it is the discovery of every single hidden ravine that brings the greatest joys and satisfactions. Unfortunately, in this remake, the fluidity of the controls and the management of the camera are not really good, often making you lose sight of the platforms below or making it difficult to walk close to the walls, with the view going crazy behind the backs of the protagonists. It rarely happens, but they are problems that shouldn't really exist in a game like this, especially given the quality achieved by other competing titles like Spyro the Dragon. Apart from the issues, the game works well and could still be easily appreciated by old fans of the original Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated is a remake that perhaps no one asked for, but it's still capable of walking on its own legs. Many hours of gameplay, new animations, new levels, and ultimately an almost obligatory purchase for those who love the old chapter medley. A title designed mainly for nostalgia, but with some interesting ideas for anyone approaching the game for the first time as well.
We couldn't afford to pay the cost of search parties this month as well, so here's the Escape Pod humble review in record time. Planet Zoo and the CNC re-release have volunteered to headline May, and it's certainly going to be a hit and miss pairing, but at least one of these is actually an enjoyable title. And when I say one of them, I mean Planet Zoo posing in top tier. My take on CNC might be controversial, but the only reason I didn't bottom tier it is that nostalgia will sweeten it for many and it has dope music. Possibly similarly controversial is Genesis Noir landing a spot at the top for delivering a unique experience, and then last but not least, surviving the aftermath also placed high. Despite its annoyances, SpongeBob accompanies CNC alongside Spellcaster University and Embr, latter probably barely missing out from being one tier higher. And this leaves us with none other than If Found Alone in the bottom. It's short, it loses its own message, not much more to be said here. With a total score of 18 out of the maximum 24 and a monthly performance of 75%, May 22 is a step backwards from last month, but to be fair, still not something to feel bad about. As always, we'd be grateful if you please the machine gods by liking our video. If you'd like to come along for next month, don't hesitate to subscribe. Any and all recommendations are welcome in the comment section, and we'll see you again next month.